us as we were growing up, we don't remember this being an issue.
New security measures in place across the West, highlighting the growing tension as we head toward Election Day. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to West Coast Wrap. I'm Alex Savage. With just a week to go before voters head to the polls, election officials all across the West are taking steps tonight to protect the process. Police dogs searching for hazards at ballot processing sites in California. Around-the-clock monitoring of ballot boxes in some parts of Washington, and the potential for snipers on rooftops of vote tabulation centers in Arizona. All of these efforts to keep voters and election officials safe. We begin tonight's coverage with Fox 10's Ashley Rodriguez in the battleground state of Arizona, where election officials say unprecedented security measures are needed.
Used to be a one-day security event, the election has now become a weeks-long planning process for Maricopa County law enforcement.
Working in public safety for 35 years in this county, yes, the last 5 years have changed dynamically, and it is sad.
This year, fences around the Maricopa County Election and Tabulation Center are lined in fabric. There are cameras on the roof pointing up to the surrounding buildings. Surveillance officers circle the block, and barbed wire tops the fence protecting the election workers' parking lot. And that's a week out from the election. On Election Day, there will be law enforcement officers in uniform and undercover in plain clothes, drones, a chopper, and the potential for snipers strategically placed on rooftops. Before 2020, the sheriff's office deployed about 50 deputies on Election Day, and now they need 200.
Not just our voters, but our staff, myself, our families have come under a lot of threat. We've lost a lot of elections officials because of this.
The Arizona Secretary of State, Adrian Fontes, has been vocal about the unprecedented level of threats and intimidation he's witnessed this election cycle. The FBI listed Arizona as one of the states with an unusual level of threats to election workers. The tension is fueled by tight races, stop the steal sentiment, and a feeling from both sides the stakes are the highest they've ever been.
All of us as we were growing up, we don't remember this being an issue.
Law enforcement is partnering at a state and local level to not only protect people, but the ballots. The sheriff says they are not seeing a lot of threats. Those usually spike after the election, meaning they will have to continue to make assessments after races are called. The county says they also have a significant team monitoring social media on a daily and sometimes hourly basis.
We understand we are in an environment now where we have both foreign actors and people within this country that are intentionally spreading misinformation about our election.
The Maricopa County Sheriff making the message clear to any bad actors.
We don't have any tolerance for any criminal activity. It's one thing for First Amendment, one thing to express your opinion. It's another when there's threatening or other violence that gets centered around this, and it's not going to happen here in Maricopa County.
And that was Fox 10's Ashley Rodriguez reporting tonight. Election officials and law enforcement in Southern California also are showing off what's being done to keep voters and election workers safe. They had a canine officer inside a Los Angeles County ballot processing center today working to sniff out toxic material that may have been inserted into ballot envelopes. They say they're also keeping tabs on the investigation of ballot boxes that were set on fire in the Pacific Northwest.
Boxes that we use in LA County are also designed to ensure the safety of the ballots. So if something was to happen, a flame should be extinguished quickly.
We are being briefed on that investigation and anything and everything to do with that incident.
LA County officials say they have no specific threats to security in the run-up to Election Day. We have an update tonight on those fires set in ballot boxes in both Washington and Oregon. Investigators say the fires are connected. Election officials say the fire in Portland didn't do any damage, but the fire in the nearby city of Vancouver, Washington, destroyed hundreds of ballots. And now election officials in both Oregon and Washington say those boxes are going to be monitored 24 hours a day through November 5th, along with beefed up police patrols in that area. One of those monitors in Oregon says she was moved to volunteer after learning about what happened.
I saw the firemen take the ballots out, and it kind of broke my heart. And then I got kind of mad, and I was like, someone's got to protect it. Oddly enough, it's going to be me today.
And police say they do have images of a suspect vehicle wanted in connection with those fires, but so far no arrests have been made in the case. Nevada election officials will be able to count mail-in ballots up to 3 days after Election Day. The Republican National Convention filed a lawsuit over the issue, arguing the Nevada Secretary of State's office violates federal election laws with vote counting after Election Day. The state Supreme Court found the RNC failed to provide a legal basis for that lawsuit. The RNC believes mail-in ballots counted after Election Day undermine election integrity. Former President Trump is pushing back as he faces criticism for a controversial weekend rally that happened in New York. Trump called the event, quote, an absolute love fest. During campaign stops in Florida and Pennsylvania today, he's been speaking about this weekend's rally at Madison Square Garden. It's getting a lot of attention. During the rally, comedian Tony Hinchcliffe called Puerto Rico a, quote, floating island of garbage. Critics say that comment was out of line. The Republican presidential nominee offered his take on Puerto Rico today while answering a question from someone who used to live in the U.S. territory.
Well, we love it. I know it very well, and we helped you through a lot of bad storms, I'll tell you. We had some really bad ones. You remember you were there when I brought the hospital ship against everyone's advice, and we got it in there and took care of a lot of people.
The Trump administration has been criticized for its efforts to help Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria in 2017. It released $13 billion worth of assistance years later, just weeks before the 2020 presidential election. Tonight, Vice President Kamala Harris delivered a call for national unity from the same spot where former President Trump addressed a crowd on January 6, just before the riot at the U.S. Capitol. The former prosecutor offered what her campaign called her closing argument in the race for the White House. The vice president asked voters to turn the page from Trump. She called him, quote, consumed by grievance and out for unchecked power.
These United States of America, we are not a vessel for the schemes of wannabe dictators. The United States of America is the greatest idea humanity ever devised.
And as this campaign comes to a close, Harris and her running mate Tim Walz are expected to campaign in the swing states that will decide this election. That includes events happening in Nevada and Arizona coming up later this week. On Thursday, former President Trump will visit both of those swing states on the same day. And of course, we will have full coverage throughout this week. Now, beyond the presidential race, this election will also decide the balance of power in Congress. And there are some important contests to watch all across the West that will determine who controls the House and the Senate. For more, let's bring in Professor David McEwen, chair of the Political Science Department at Sonoma State University. Professor, always good to see you. We appreciate this time here. Let's start first with the battle for control of the Senate. Democrats, of course, holding that slim majority in the Senate right now, and there is a tremendous amount of focus on Montana, where Democratic incumbent Jon Tester is really in a tough re-election fight against Republican Tim Sheehy. How crucial is this race in Montana?
Well, it's a hugely important race for Democrats to hold on. Democrats have an advantage in the Senate because of the three independents that caucus with them. So you have a 48-49 split, more Republicans than Democrats, but you bring along those three independents who caucus with the Democrats. That gets you to 51-49. If you look at Tester's record, you look at what he's done in Montana, he's a good fit for Montana as a Democrat in many ways. But his opponent, Tim Sheehy, Navy SEAL veteran, someone whose combat record and whether or not he was wounded or not in combat has come under fire in the last couple of days. Polling has shown Sheehy's about even, slightly ahead as a Republican candidate. And Democrats left Jon Tester and the money that Democrats could bring into that race about a month ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago. Tester seems to have held his own during that time. He's pressed back. This is a hugely important race that could determine the balance of power. Again, hugely important because if we look at other Democratic races across the country, Democrats are in a dogfight in many of them. Sherrod Brown in Ohio, for example. That's because Democrats have more than twice as many seats at risk as Republicans this cycle. There are a total of 34 seats. Democrats are defending 23 of those 34 seats going on this particular election. So Democrats are likely to lose the Senate, all things being equal. And they'll point back to Jon Tester to see if they left Tester too early, having abandoned him with money 4 or 5 weeks before while he's fighting for his political life.
All right, there's a couple of other races, Senate races here in the West that we are following. They don't seem to be quite as competitive as the contest happening in Montana, but a lot of attention being paid to the Arizona Senate race. We have Democrat Ruben Gallego, who is taking on Republican Kari Lake. Gallego appears to be in command here in this contest. Of course, we know that Kari Lake has closely aligned herself with former President Trump, but it's interesting that she is polling significantly behind Trump here. Who are the voters that Lake needs to win over to try to make this race interesting?
Yeah, I mean, look, Tester in Montana is a key kind of marquee race. But if you look at Arizona, this is a state that historically votes very slowly and processes the ballots very slowly. As a result, we're seeing kind of a lag a little bit in terms of what's going on in terms of mail-in ballots in Arizona. And this race is closed somewhat. So I paid very close attention to this the last week. Gallego's been consistently ahead, but Kari Lake has been able to draw out some of her supporters. She doesn't seem to be having the same buy-in that she had when she ran against Katie Hobbs for governor, a race that she's never conceded. But in this particular race, she isn't gone. And she still has some political life moving forward. And Ruben Gallego, was in double-digit lead 6 months ago. He's a 9-point lead about 3 months ago. Now that lead is down to about 3 or 4 points. It's a dead heat. So there's a lot of late money coming into that race. And Kari Lake has to get, if you will, a little bit closer in terms of turnout with Donald Trump. So we're seeing some differences there in the early vote in Arizona that so far helps her push this race a little bit closer. Democrats are going to have to rely on a heavy late voter turnout, which helps them in the presidential race. But also, again, Arizona is one of those 3 battleground states that counts very slowly. It may not be a race that we know exactly on election night the results.
Yeah, 2 key Senate races to keep an eye on here in the West. All right, let's shift and talk about what will happen here when we talk about control of the House. We have about a half dozen congressional races just in the state of California alone that are toss-up races which will determine who controls the House moving forward. Most of these races are Republican incumbents who are holding on to very slim leads right now. What do we watch for in these contests, and why are these California races so important this year?
Well, they're hugely important. Let's start right at the top. If Democrats and Hakeem Jeffries wants to come in as the Speaker, if Democrats want to win the House, that path may start in New York, for example, in seats like George Santos's old seat, but it's going to be completed in California. So California would be the place that either Republicans hold the House or Democrats flip the House, and that's important for the lame duck session that happens in early December. If you look at the map there, what you see is many of these races are in the purple areas, right? They're in District 13 or 22. These are valley districts, or in Southern California. And as you mentioned, they are mostly Republican seats that are defended. In some cases, they are districts where Joe Biden beat Donald Trump in 2020, and there's a Republican member. So there's the belief is that they're targets. As you look at these targets, just broadly, there are about 30 targets that are in common across the country between Democrats and Republicans, but 6 of them are in California. And one of those seats of note is a Democratic seat. That's California 47. That's Katie Porter's old seat. And Republicans are going to try to flip that seat because they think they're going to lose a couple of seats, particularly like Duarte, California 13. So we're going to pay close attention to this on election night, and particularly look at the barometer of California 41, Ken Calvert's seat, which moved out from kind of Riverside out to Palm Springs. If Democrats have a good night, that's a seat they would flip.
Yeah, California playing an important role here in terms of control of Congress this election cycle. We have to leave the conversation there. We appreciate the breakdown. Professor David McEwen from Sonoma State University. Great to have you on.
Love seeing you, Alex.
All right. And you can head over to westcoastwrap.com to get updates on some of the top issues and the top races happening across the West. Our online coverage includes an in-depth look at how the debate over immigration policy is playing out in the battleground state of Nevada. Coming up tonight here on West Coast Wrap, the Southern California brothers who admit killing their parents decades ago may be working on a new strategy to try to win their release from prison. Coming up tonight, what Eric and Lyle Menendez hope will allow them to walk free even sooner. Also, a cell phone captures images of a confrontation inside a California coffee shop. We'll hear from the man who says he was singled out for what he had on his hat.
And in weather, here is our live camera looking out towards Seattle. Clear skies, current temperature a chilly 49 degrees. We'll update the forecast for the West Coast coming up.
The legal team representing the Menendez brothers is trying a new strategy to have them released from prison. Attorney Mark Garagos tells TMZ he's filing documents asking California Governor Gavin Newsom to grant clemency to Eric and Lyle Menendez. They've been serving life without parole for the murders of their parents inside their Beverly Hills home back in 1989. Last week, Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gascon announced he was seeking to have the brothers resentenced, which would make them eligible for parole. I talked with TMZ's Charles Ladaboudiere about this latest push by the Menendez brothers to win their freedom and what it would mean for the governor to grant them clemency.
And that would mean that they don't have to wait for the courts. They don't have to wait for a parole board hearing, both of which could take much longer, at some point late in November or maybe even beyond that. But if the governor were to issue clemency, well, that's something that could happen within just a couple of weeks, potentially. And in fact, just last weekend, Governor Newsom on his podcast was talking about the fact that he expected to get something like this, to get a request like this.
The Los Angeles County District Attorney decided to seek resentencing after new evidence emerged that the Menendez brothers were sexually abused by their father. That petition must still be approved by a judge, and a parole board would then decide if the brothers can go free. A new wildfire is forcing hundreds of families from their homes in Colorado tonight. The Highland Lake fire started yesterday in Teller County, west of Colorado Springs. One house has already been destroyed. 700 more in the city of Divide are threatened tonight. People started to evacuate that area yesterday. Emergency crews are keeping them out tonight because of strong winds that could easily spread these flames.
Seen a lot of hand crews. Last night our crews worked late in putting dozer line and then road grader lines through certain areas towards the head of the fire. We feel comfortable that we actually have the start of good containment.
Flames are about 15% contained tonight on this fire. The fire has burned about 166 acres. Investigators do believe it was human caused. For more, let's bring in KTVU meteorologist Mark Tamayo, who is tracking the conditions that are challenging crews on the fire lines there in Colorado. And Mark, we are really not done with fire season just yet.
Yeah, that's right, Alex. Parts of the West, we could be talking about elevated fire danger into the weekend and into next week. But yeah, in terms of Colorado Springs, current wind right now gusting to 35 miles an hour. So they did some breezy conditions complicating the firefight. Here's one of the forecast model that lumps everything together: the temperature, the wind, the relative humidity, and where you see some coverage, that's where you have an increase in the fire danger. So you can see right now some of the coverage showing up on this map here. As we put this into motion, here we are tomorrow afternoon, and things could ramp up a bit more as you can pick out toward parts of New Mexico, and as you can see up in portions of Northern California. So fire season continues, but we are tracking some rain as well, and even some snowfall. As you can see, some changing conditions out here in the Pacific, mainly impacting the Pacific Northwest. Right now, though, as you can see, some coverage, some cloud covered, even a few scattered showers developing in parts of Utah into northern Arizona. And then here we go, some clouds approaching the coastlines of Oregon and Washington. So this is a system that will keep things a bit cool and unsettled up in the north over the next few days. Right now, it's a chilly 49 degrees in Seattle. Reno's 45. Phoenix is checking in at 71 degrees. And take a look right now at some of the advisories. So not only fire danger out there, but also some hints of winter. As you can see, winter weather advisory is posted for portions of Washington for tomorrow afternoon, 2 p.m. until Friday, 5 p.m. So yeah, we're talking about some rain and some snowfall. This was Seattle today with a temperature of 54 degrees, some blue sky, and also still some clouds out there in the distance. In San Francisco, a nice day with lots of sunshine, temperatures in the lower 60s, and then down in the Phoenix area, still some sunshine to report as well, with temperatures in the upper 70s. So remember all those days we had temperatures 105, 108 degrees. Not the case for today. Here's a plan for tomorrow. More rain up in Seattle, temperatures in the 50s, clouds on the increase for San Francisco, and rain showers could be on the increase by tomorrow evening, and then partly sunny skies in Phoenix with temperatures in the 70s. Here's the forecast model. The bulk of the active weather is focused up to the north. There's that rain line moving into Northern California. It is still dry in the Southern California area. So over the next 3 days, lots of rain clouds for Seattle for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Chance of some rain showers by Wednesday evening, and temperatures in Phoenix will be warming back up into the lower 80s. No triple digits, but a little bit of a bump in the numbers by Thursday and Friday.
Okay, Mark, thank you. Coming up tonight here on West Coast Wrap, a tense exchange caught on camera in California. Tonight, why a coffee shop customer thinks employees called him out. A tense confrontation at a coffee shop in the San Francisco Bay Area was caught on camera, and it all centered around a customer's hat featuring the Star of David. KTVU's Henry Lee spoke with a man who says he was kicked out of that business illegally.
You're being asked to leave. You're causing a disruption. I'm being asked to leave. This is a private business. You're being asked to leave.
This is cell phone video taken by Jonathan Hirsch at the Jerusalem Coffee House in North Oakland on Saturday afternoon. It shows the cafe owner demanding that Hirsch leave. The reason, according to Hirsch, the hat he's wearing, showing the Star of David, a symbol of Judaism.
This gentleman asked me to leave because of my hat. You're being. This is a violent hat, and you need to leave. My hat is a violent hat? It's violent. You need to leave.
I wear this hat all the time. I've been wearing. I mean, I've had this hat for years, and it means a lot to me. But it's meant a lot more in the last year.
The dispute gets more heated.
Are you a Zionist? You said. Are you a Zionist? I don't have to identify myself by my beliefs.
Hirsch tells the owner he's welcome to call the police.
The police will come and they will educate him that what he's doing is wrong and that he is ignorant.
Hirsch tells KTVU he and his 5-year-old son ended up at the cafe because his son needed to go to the bathroom and his wife wanted a coffee.
I wasn't going out looking for a fight, but when someone comes up to me fighting, I can't teach my son that, like, Jews are these meek people that run and cower.
Oakland police arrive, but the argument continues, and the owner taunts Hirsch and curses him in the officer's presence.
I love Jewish people.
Why
are you saying it to
me? Stop! Go outside.
The officers tell Hirsch to go outside and say if he returns, he could be arrested for trespassing. The owner declined an on-camera interview, telling me talking to the media is like talking to the police.
This is one of the most clear-cut cases of anti-Jewish discrimination that I have seen in the Bay Area.
Jeremy Russell of the Jewish Community Relations Council says this isn't the first time the cafe has raised eyebrows. Earlier this month, it introduced a new menu, including a drink called Iced Intifada, named after Intifada, or Palestinian uprising.
But to deny somebody service in a place of public accommodation on the basis of what here sure looks like religion, national origin, and the like, is simply not allowed under state laws.
Hirsch says he may take legal action.
I'm interested in pursuing justice here, and if the city can't remedy this, then I'm willing to pursue whatever avenues I have.
Henry Lee, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
And Oakland police say at this point they have not determined whether this was a hate crime. The cafe owner did say that he was going to send a statement to us. We are still awaiting that statement. And that does it for West Coast Wrap tonight. We appreciate you watching as always. And a quick reminder before we head off here, you can stay up to date on all the big stories we're following across the West Coast. Just head to our website. It's westcoastwrap.com. You can also stream our shows right there on your smart TV by downloading the Fox Local app. We'll leave you here with a beautiful shot of the Space Needle and downtown Seattle. Have a great night.